my name is Jason JROCK Houston, and you guys are listening to an interview being done for Chaotic Riffs Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.chaoticriffs.com. It's my great pleasure to be speaking with legendary Canadian singer Lee Aaron. How are you doing tonight, Lee?
I'm doing great, Jason.
It's great
to talk to you.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to speak with you. Now, like I said, you're quite legendary in your own home country. Do you get a chance to play much in the U.S.?
Well, considering the fact that this is actually my very first real release down there, no. So, I mean, I had an album that did reasonably well as an import way back in the day, like back in the 80s. It was sold out of a little import shop back, of course, when physical product was in its heyday, right? Did really well as an import, this little shop in New Jersey. And so we went down there and we played a few clubs on the Eastern Seaboard there, including a place called L'Amour in Brooklyn, which was actually a pretty big venue at the time.
Yeah,
so do have some fond memories of that. But unfortunately, no, my subsequent albums, because of, truthfully, more of it was, contractual politics. Never got released down there. Usually, the concept of an album usually, was followed up by dates, but I did tour everywhere else in the world, pretty much.
Yeah, I was kind of interested in that because, like a lot of people, I've heard the name Lee Aaron. I'm kind of aware of who you are. You were one of the first women, in hard rock, so to speak. I mean, even before anybody knew about Lita Ford or any of the women in rock that came later. So I just kind of always curious about that. Now, I've been reading. Just last week, you released this latest album, Fire and Gasoline. It seems like this latest album, it's already just out a week, and it's getting great reviews. Are you surprised at the kind of reviews you've been getting?
Am I surprised?
Well, I guess like when you consider, especially like here in the U.S., like you said, maybe you're not as well known as you are in Canada. You haven't had as much music released here. It's almost like for people that have never heard of Lee Aaron, let's say before of a Fire and Gasoline album, it's almost like some people might think this is your debut album or that you're a new artist.
And that's okay.
Yeah. It's almost.
I'm totally okay with that, actually.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, it's probably the album that I'm most proud of. I just, in the last few years of my career, started self-producing.
Okay.
And started moving in the direction of writing a lot more of my own material. I've always been a writer. I've always written my own songs, but a lot of the times that was with a co-writer, and a lot of the times, when we were under contract with a label up here, a big label, there was always a little bit of this battle with, they wanted to introduce songs they owned the publishing for. So
Wow.
Quite often, it's a pretty typical story, right?
Yeah.
So quite often I'd end up with this album where I'd written, say, 8 of the 11 songs, and there were 3 covers that the label owned, the label who I was also signed to their publishing, they owned the publishing for as well. And the ironic thing, though, is those songs never ended up being singles. It was always the songs that I'd co-written with my guitar player. But, in the last few years, I've moved more in a direction of, really writing a lot of my own material and producing my own albums. So, in some ways, this album feels like a little bit of a debut because it's probably the one that I have had the most complete control over myself.
And dare I ask, does that have anything to do, I'm assuming that you're with a different label than you've been all these years?
Well, when I made this, I completed this album, financed it myself,
Wow.
Produced it myself before I went shopping. And when I went shopping, what I decided would be probably the best route would be to form my own label, which is Big Sister Records, and so that I could retain all the creative control. And what I did is I licensed it to a distributor, which is Caroline Universal, right?
Wow.
So I figured that would probably be the best route to go to get the maximum distribution, but be able to, when you're a direct label signing, you start losing, you start losing control, and also the parameters under which you actually, the pay structure under which you actually make money totally changes. Right?
Yeah, it must be a great feeling too to finally have that control, and finally be able to go to the studio and that I'm gonna do my own songs that I write. I'm not gonna have all these outside writers. But at the same token, I understand you worked with a very talented guitar player and songwriter, Sean Kelly from the band Helix. How did you hook up with him?
Oh, it's really funny that you actually say he's from Helix, because that's not really how I know Sean. I know Sean from playing with Canadian superstar Nelly Furtado.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so Sean was Nelly's guitar player for quite a few years, and so Sean and I co-wrote 5 of the 11 songs on the album, and the other 6 being written by myself. But the way I ended up connecting with him is Sean had one of these sort of areas of Canadian rock history that has been left out of a lot of the Canadian rock history books is this sort of era of late 80s, 90s hard rock in Canada, which was it was fantastic music. They were well-written songs. They had international impact. They influenced an entire generation of younger artists that were to come. And it's kind of been omitted from a lot of Canadian history books, which tend to focus on, the Buffy St. Marie's, the Joni Mitchells, the Gordon Lightfoots, the Leonard Cohens, And so Sean wrote this book called Metal on Ice.
Wow.
And it's all about touring the Great Canadian North. And so we did a big extensive interview for that, and I contributed to the book that way. And then he ended up subsequently recording a companion CD to go along with the book, and we re-recorded one of my old hits, Metal Queen, for that companion CD. And so that's how we ended up meeting, is we just ended up having a lot of mutual respect for each other, because he's educated, he's articulate, he's a super nice guy, and we just hit it off really well. And so as the bantering went on, we went, it might be fun. It might be fun if we wrote some songs together. And I was like, I'm actually ready to gear up to do another rock record anyway. So let's see how that works out. And so we started bouncing some ideas back and forth, and that's how we came up with 5 of the tracks on the album. And then of course that followed with, well, this is crazy. You should just play in my band. And so now he's a permanent member of my band as well. So
that's great to hear, because he's one of those guitar players that he's kind of been under the radar, but he's very, very talented. And I kind of brought up the name Helix because that's kind of where I knew him from. I'm kind of a hard rock guy, and I was curious, growing up in Canada, who were some of the bands that really had an influence on you? Because I know some great Canadian bands that were really big back in the day, like Moxie and Helix, like we mentioned earlier, and Triumph, and of course Rush.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. My very first album that I recorded when I was about 18 years old, the Leon Project, I was very young, and my manager hooked me up with some of the members of Moxie.
Wow.
And Santers, and Rick Emmett sang on one of my tracks. And so I ended up, when I was a really young girl, I worked with a lot of those legendary people, which was just an amazing experience for me,
Yeah.
So, as far as influence, I'd say, actually one of the bands that I just loved when I was a kid was Max Webster. Are you guys familiar with them?
No, I have to look that up, but I'm not too familiar with them, but okay.
Yeah, well, they were a Toronto band, and Tim Mitchell ended up coming out of that band and having his own solo career. And, they were just they were kind of like halfway between pop, hard rock, and like quirky prog. If that makes any sense. And so they were kind of they were on the fringe, a little bit like Rush was,
Okay.
And so, and I'd be lying to say Rush wasn't influential on me when I remember being 11 years old when I think Fly By Night came out, and hearing that song on my little yellow transistor radio that I had, and cycling all the way across the city to my friend's house to go, oh my gosh, you gotta go to this band, it's called Rush, they're amazing. And they're, obviously being from Toronto, where we were all from, there was when Rush exploded, it was sort of this sense of ownership, a homegrown band, so it was really cool.
And Rush, of course, they've definitely made their mark, but being a little bit of a Rush fan, how do you feel about the band, kind of finally called it a day, and I guess this last tour they went on was their farewell tour.
I'm, sad.
Yeah, yeah.
But, I'm sad because, it's not like I own every single Rush album. But
No, I hear you.
what they mean to the Canadian rock scene and the Canadian rock industry. And in fact, that's a little side tidbit of information. In the 1990s, I served for a couple years on the CARIS Board of Directors up here, which is the Canadian Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, and they plan the Juno Awards, which is it's like the Canadian equivalent of the Grammy.
Okay,
right?
okay.
And I served on that, and at that time, I remember pushing the committee to start a hard rock category because hard rock was huge.
Yeah.
Still. And, it was like this, like I told you, there's this like funny thing in Canada where they don't recognize their hard rock talent. It's crazy. And I pushed the committee to start this category, and of course that year, Rush, who had this amazing career to date,
Yeah.
won their very first Juno Award, and Ray Daniels, their manager, called me personally to thank me.
Wow.
Like, woo! So it was kind of a cool thing, right?
Yeah.
Again, as far as, them retiring, it's sad, but what do you do? I mean, if Neil can't play anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, a lot of these, like, they're kind of like a generation ahead of me.
Yeah.
But a lot of these artists that are getting older, like, believe me, I was like bawling one day that Bowie died. I was, because he was influential on me, when I was, like a young girl in the 70s, growing up and listening to Aladdin Sane and all those really cool albums. And, but, unfortunately, there's this sort of generation of artists that are they're starting to have health problems and stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean,
look at how many people have died this year.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
even Lemmy, who would have thought? But the last couple of years he was battling some health issues. But it just goes to show. I mean, especially 2016, a lot of people just fallen by the wayside. It's amazing, But getting back to what I was talking about, another great Canadian band I brought up was Triumph. They never really got the same recognition like as Rush did, but here in the States. But what's kind of interesting is a few years ago they released. I can't really, off the top of my head, name too many Triumph songs, but I sure do know a lot of Triumph songs, and give you an idea what I'm talking about is a few years ago they released a Greatest Hits CD, and I didn't realize until I got the CD, wow, how many great songs that band put out,
Oh, they did, and Rick Emmett's voice is just, he still sings like that, he's amazing.
Yeah. And now, getting back to this latest album, because I was reading online too that for years that you've kind of gone between, like you said, this is your first rock album in a couple of years, that you also have done like jazz type of albums. So how do you decide, like when you're going to record, is it just kind of whatever you're in the mood to do, or?
Could you please?
Well, like I was reading, I was reading.
Explain that question a little bit better.
Yeah, I was reading like on your Wikipedia earlier and doing research for this, but it was explaining on there that you're known mostly like as a rock artist, but you have put out like jazz type of albums from time to time, and I was kind of interested in like, do you consider yourself more like a jazz artist, a rock artist, or in between, or how would you define people? I mean, yourself as an artist, would you say you lean more towards rock music, or?
Well, it's funny because that seems to confuse a lot of people when I say, yeah, I did jazz, or whatever. It's sort of like, Robert, I mean, maybe for lack of a better example, I'm not comparing myself to a great talent like Robert Plant, but for instance, Robert Plant has gone on and done some interesting musical diversions.
Yeah.
At each of his career, right? And again, like he's quite a bit older than I am, but in terms of he did the thing with Alison Krauss, right?
Yeah.
That the latest album, which I thought was actually brilliant, is the Lullaby and the Ceaseless Roar. I how do I explain it?
You just didn't more than one type of music.
When I started out singing, before I was ever in a rock band, I sang jazz and blues and theater style music, and I sort of accidentally ended up in a rock band, but loved it. And,
Yeah.
You sort of evolved into this rock artist, a recording artist, But, you know, in the 90s, basically everybody who had anything to do with corporate rock or commercial, you know, more classic kind of rock, with the advent of grunge, you know, you couldn't get arrested. So, during that time, you know, I took a little bit of a hiatus from trying to compete with pop culture because it was impossible and it was depressing. You know, anybody from the 80s and early 90s era can tell you that that's what it was like. So, you know, what I did is I sort of started digging and going back to my roots.
Wow.
And I went backward and I started singing some jazz and blues again. And for that reason, like when I did it, it wasn't like I was, you know, just trying to create something brand new that I could monetize in my life. It was like actually something I was doing. The motivations were purely artistic.
I hear you. Okay, that's...
Yeah, and the reality is, you know, even bands like Zeppelin, I mean, these guys stole from Muddy Waters.
Yeah.
Dixon. These guys, this is where rock and roll, people forget that this is where rock and roll came from.
Yeah, if you really want to strip it down, I mean, people...
Blues music,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, go back all the way to Elvis Presley, you know?
Yeah, I mean, for me it was like sort of going backward and digging deep into the history of rock and roll. And to be honest with you, I think it made me a way better singer and a way more well-rounded artist to understand the music history of rock and roll and to you know, and it also, you know, established a new level of respectability for me, especially here in Canada, because I was kind of pigeonholed as a one-dimensional kind of rock chick.
Yeah.
So it was good for me to do that, and I put out a jazz album in 2000, and I put out another sort of jazz-infused album in 2004, and then my daughter was born.
Wow.
I didn't make a record for 11 years.
Wow. And so what's that going to be like for you? You know, going back out on the road. You know, now that you're a mother and all, you going to be taking your daughter on the road with you, or will you be just doing like, you know, select shows?
At this point, you know, I think that will be determined by the success of the record. If the record's really successful and the dates are there and the money's there, I have a son as well. My son and my daughter are 10 and 11. I would pull them out of school and just take a nanny and go on the road. What a cool life for a little while, right?
Yeah.
So if the success of the record dictated that, absolutely. But in the meantime, while we're trying to sort of build the album, selected dates is what I'm looking at doing. And selected dates actually of what I have done for the last decade. I get festival and offers every summer. I go out and do stuff. If I get an offer to go to Europe that makes sense, I go. You know, like I was at Sweden Rock Festival a few years ago, and that was amazing. You know.
Wow.
If it dictates that I'll do it, I will do it. You know. So I love playing live. It's still my greatest source of joy.
What gets you going, huh?
Yeah.
And so, like, let me ask you, like, as far as recording this latest album, like I said, it's been getting such great reviews. Like, you get a guy like Sean that you wrote these 5 tracks with, anyways. And how would you say when you get with somebody and you write some tunes? I mean, how big of an influence would you say he had on these 5 tunes, or does his contribution, you know, really affect what you contribute to the song?
It's interesting because people have asked me a lot about the creative process, right? And so it's a different type of thing when you're writing with another writer. Like say songs like Heart Fix, 50 Miles from Memphis, Tomboy, I wrote those by myself. So when those are just a few of the ones I wrote by myself. And when I'm writing alone, sometimes the song, it's weird. It almost lands almost fully formed in my head. Like I'm hearing the melody and I'm hearing the chords underneath, and it's all I can do to run down to my demo studio fast enough to just sort of get the ideas out. And sometimes I don't even have all the words yet, so you should hear some of my demos. They're so crappy sounding. They're like, you know, just like a little garage band drum beat, and then me playing some chords or playing a bass line on the keyboard because I'm too crappy of a bass player, you know, and then I'm just, you know, I might sing the main chorus line I've come up with in my head, but then all of the verse lyrics and the sort of melody, I'm just kind of like singing gibberish, if that makes any sense.
No, yeah, like a scratch track, yeah, kind of thing.
Yeah, so that's kind of my process when I'm writing alone, is I just sort of get it out, no matter how bad it sounds. And then I'll go back later and go, okay, you know what, I've actually written proper lyrics for the chorus now, I'll re-record that. You know?
And of course, I guess it depends on the song, but typically, like, are you a writer, like, do you typically, like, write lyrics first, or do you usually start off with the music?
It's both.
Okay, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, you know, sometimes I'll get a lyric idea that forms into music. Usually for me, though, it's like chords. I'll get ideas for chords in my head, and sometimes simultaneously there's a melody line on top of it. And like then it's like I gotta go put it down and then figure out what the song is going to be about now.
Yeah.
Sometimes a lyric idea lives. Now, a couple of the songs that I wrote with Sean, like, I'll give you an example. If You Don't Love Me Anymore, it's the second last song on the album. He played me an iPhone memo of some guitar chords, and I said, hey, I like that idea. It reminds me of this or whatever. So the Monday when he got home after we had been on tour for the weekend, he demoed it up and as a full song form, and he sent it to me, and I just wrote a melody and lyrics over top of it.
Wow.
So but then a song like, say, Fire and Gasoline, that he sent me a guitar riff, and it was that he sent me that just as an iPhone memo, and he texted it to me. And I went, ooh, that's a really cool riff. But that's all he sent me.
Wow.
So I took it down to my studio, and I played it as a keyboard line, and then I wrote the chorus after myself. So I wrote so he contributed part of the music, but the lyrics and the melody and.
Wow, that's talk about modern technology. I mean, that just amazes me. I mean, I've had other musicians tell me that I've interviewed like kind of a similar story about their recording process. I mean, the fact these days that you don't even have to be in the same room or same recording studio. You can lay down a vocal, and he can send you a guitar part, and you can kind of all mesh it together. Just amazes me.
Well, Sean lives in Toronto, and I live in Vancouver.
Yeah. I'm just saying it's
each other ideas, but when it came to the actual process of doing the album, I wouldn't have done it any other way. I said, you're flying out for pre-production, and we're going to actually go into the studio together as a band. There was no way that I was going to go send tracks to Toronto for him to put guitar overdubs on later. There was no way I wanted it to happen that way.
And again, you know, a funny thing on that is that's the modern way a lot of bands do. But I'm with you. You know, I come from an age where, you know, back in the day, a lot of my favorite rock bands, like some of the ones we were talking about earlier, all the guys would be in the room together. They'd be writing stuff on the spot. They'd be jamming songs out. They'd be, you know, you can tell the difference when you put on an album that was recorded live that way versus a modern day album that was just pieced together.
Well, I hope you can hear that on Fire and Gasoline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now let me ask you, because I'm interested enough. Any band you're talking about, usually they pick a particular song to be their title track for a reason. I was curious, why was that just your favorite track on the album? Why did you think that song deserved to be the title of the album?
You know what, a few people have asked me. I didn't even pick it, to be honest with you. We were struggling. We had such a hard time figuring out what we wanted to call the album. I actually liked calling the album Heart Fix, but the feeling with the distributor that I signed to was that didn't say rock album, to say a band in Germany that was buying it. And they wanted it to be dead simple. So the suggestion was made to me to call the album Fire and Gasoline, because Fire and Gasoline says rock album.
Yeah, I mean, really, when you think about it, because, I mean, I thought a couple of things. I mean, obviously, it's the title of one of the songs, but when I hear a song, okay, fire and gasoline, okay, you put those two things together, they ignite. They're very powerful. So that's kind of a rock image right there. But then I think of also like of the word gasoline reminds me of this old classic Rod Stewart song from the '70s, Gasoline Alley. But yeah, when you think fire and gasoline, you just think ignition, fire, powerful. So I think that's a smart move. Yeah. Now. You're mentioning that you formed your own label. So I was curious, this label you formed, is it specifically going to be just for your own music, or is there any chance that you might want to sign other artists to your label?
Again, I guess that would depend on the success of my record.
Yeah.
I've always, loved the idea of, possibly developing talent in the future, but yeah, I guess it would sort of
depend on how this album does. Yeah.
Depend on how it goes, This is actually my third record label. I got off my label in 1992 here in Canada and went independent at that time, and I formed a label called Hip Chick Music, and then that company, we dissolved that company, and I had started Spastic Plastic in the 90s, and then, so Big Sister Records is actually my third sort of, for lack of a better, I hate to say vanity label, but just like a
well, see to me, the smart move about doing, I mean, of course, if you're with a bigger label, that there is a possibility of getting like bigger tour support and money to back you, but at the same time, like you've experienced, you also have a label thinking like, we own you, you have to do what we say, they control everything, like, and I think this latest album is kind of so far so good. It kind of like, I don't have anybody control me. I don't have anybody. I can put my music out there how I want to put it out there, how I want it represented. I don't have anybody telling me go and write something more commercial. I can do things my way, and at the same time, if the album's a success, you reap all the benefits and don't have to give a label anything, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Well, all I'm sort of saying is that just the structure of how you get paid changes significantly if you're a distributed label, or as opposed to if you are a direct label signing. Because if you're direct label signing, usually they're investing in you, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And that's the way it goes. And so, like, that's how it was for me when I was a direct label signing in the 80s and 90s. And, if someone's investing thousands of dollars in you, they're going to have some say about how the
of course, that's business.
But I mean, that just makes good business sense for them.
Yeah.
The problem is, a lot of the times the guys in suits don't know how to make good music, right? Or they're very, very influenced by, because everybody's trying to retain their job, right?
Yeah.
Have you actually seen the Martin Scorsese, Mick Jagger series vinyl yet?
I've seen one or two episodes. It seems pretty good. I haven't really delved my teeth into it, but everybody I hear is talking about it.
So what I was going to say was that, they all want to keep their jobs. I mean, this is true, and they tend to be very influenced by, well, this is really happening right now, so why can't you be more like Rihanna? Or why can't you be more like this person, because this is what they're playing on the radio these days? And it's like, nobody ever created a legacy by trying to be somebody else.
And it seems like this, just talking to you, it seems like in this latest album, you've not only taken control, but you feel a lot more independent. I mean, in the past, when you had these other labels kind of, dictating the show, did you ever feel kind of like, not that you're ashamed of any music you put out there, but kind of like you were told what to do and you didn't have as much freedom, like you're kind of creating music for other people?
Well, there were always some compromises made. I mean, I did records with some of the world's biggest producers. I did, my album in 1985, I was like, I think I was like 21 or 22, and had Bob Ezrin was producing my record.
Oh, Bob Ezrin, you can't go wrong with that guy. I mean, he's one of my favorite all-time producers. Alice Cooper, Kiss, and
I mean, he's fantastic. But you know what? I was completely intimidated. So probably that album might have had more of me in it if I was more established and more confident in myself as an artist and a person. You know what I'm sort of saying?
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. So, there's definitely a lot of Bob Ezrin on that record. That doesn't mean that it's a bad record. I mean, and I did an album in 1987 with Peter Coleman, who produced a few Pat Benatar records.
Oh, wow.
I know, I worked with some pretty cool people, but yeah, I think...
Let me ask you, getting back to Bob Ezrin for a minute, I was curious, how involved was he with the songwriting on that album? The reason I ask is a lot of the stuff he's done, like with Alice Cooper and Kiss, he's very involved in the songwriting as well, which I think really made those songs, much stronger songs, just his involvement in them.
No, he didn't write any of the songs on my record.
That's interesting.
So he actually stepped in partway through. The story of how Bob Ezrin ended up producing me is that we were in a studio called Phase 1 Studios in Toronto, and Phase 1 Studios had Studio A and Studio B. And we were in Studio, we were in one of them, I don't remember which one we were in, Studio A. And Bob Ezrin was next door in Studio B, and he was producing this, it was a big compilation project with like Motley Crue and Twisted Sister and Lita Ford and all these legendary rock bands from the 80s. And our producer, Paul Gross, who had produced Metal Queen for us, the previous album, was in an accident and couldn't continue to produce the album. And during that process, when we were recording, Bob kept coming over and popping his head in our studio to hear what we were doing. And I know several times he came over and said, man, I love your voice. You got an amazing voice. And so when Paul was out of commission and he couldn't produce the album, Bob went into our label and said, I'd like to take over producing the Aaron record.
Wow.
But the songs were pretty much written. Bob brought, what did he bring? He brought one song that he had. He played me these demos by a guy named Joe Cerzano.
Oh, okay.
You know this? I think he's a New Jersey guy. Anyway, and so there was this song called "Barely Holding On" that we didn't write, and it was like a power ballad, and that ended up being a really big production number. And that album ended up. I was on a little label out of Belgium at the time called Roadrunner in 1985. And within 6 weeks, we sold 100,000 albums.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, it went crazy. Then they did the Europeans, they just loved that song.
Wow.
So it ended up, it created a bit of a legacy for me over there. So.
Yeah, oh, cool.
Pretty cool.
And let me ask you now, getting back to the fact that maybe you're better known there in Canada than you are here in the U.S., if this album really starts to take off like it looks like it might, any chance that you would be able to re-release any of your past material or past CDs here in the U.S.? Are people still able to get those CDs?
They're all available through Amazon.
Oh, okay.
They can get them. The problem is, though, that I don't own the rights to them.
Yeah.
I own the rights to my last 3 or 4 albums. The first 7 that I did. Unfortunately, I was under one of those quote-unquote 80s contracts. So my masters, and the funny thing is that my previous masters were owned by a company here in Canada that ended up being bought out by another company, Commodore, merged with another company and became this company called Songcord, and they ultimately ended up going bankrupt. So my masters sat in a warehouse for 4 years. But unfortunately, the price tag was just too high.
I hear you now. I've heard over the years that one way of getting around that is kind of a lot of bands re-recording. Is that something you'd ever even think about, or are you one of these artists that believe you don't like to go back and kind of mess with the classic? Let the classic.
If I did a live album, I definitely would re-record some of the old ones.
Yeah.
And the project that I did with Sean Kelly. Last year, we did re-record Metal Queen, which was a big hit for me, in Europe and in Canada.
And as far as
recorded, so
as far as the new CD, has there been any talk of releasing a video or anything?
Absolutely. Is this going to be a webcast online?
Well, yeah, like I said, we post the audio online, and so people are going to get to download the audio, and they'll hear the interview word for word. And that's the cool thing about when I do these interviews is I don't like to edit anything. I like to post it 100% as it was done. When people get to hear exactly what you said and nothing gets twisted around.
Sure. Well, yeah, there are a couple of videos and a couple of promo videos. Like a promo, they're not full songs, but they're like 30, 40 seconds of one of the songs, and they're sort of like commercials, and they have a band in them. So,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to shoot me off after we're done talking here, give me your email address. I can send you links to all of them.
Okay, yeah, I will definitely do that. And real quick, I was curious. When you start playing live, have you given any thought to how much of a new album you'll be playing live versus classic material?
Well, I guess that depends on the response we're getting.
Yeah.
Right now, in my live show, we pretty much play all of my older hits, and then I think we've introduced 3 or 4 new songs into the set already, even before the album came out, and they were just going over fantastic. So, yeah, we might throw a couple more in for sure.
Okay. Well, once again, Lee, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to do this. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And kind of interesting thing is, like I said, the name Lee Aaron has been out there for several years, and I've been aware of a name, but I'm really excited to get this new album because I've been hearing just rave reviews, and so I really enjoyed talking to you and getting your story out there. Anytime you'd like to do this again down the line, I'd really enjoy talking to you. But thanks so much for doing this, and I'm going to let you go now. So take care.
Absolutely, Jason, and thank you so much for supporting the new record.
Oh yeah, we're always happy to do that. So that's what this is all about. So thanks so much for doing this, Lee, and I wish you all the luck with your new album.
Sounds great.
Okay, bye-bye.